Hi, welcome everybody. My name is Michael Evans, and welcome to Career Transitions Beyond the Financials. Today, we're going to talk about how to elevate your journey with a plan. I founded Cogent Strategic Wealth over 12 years ago to help high-achieving professionals design, build, and protect a plan of their own so they can live life on their own terms. And one of the things that I know about assisting these folks, and also through my own travels and my own journey through my own transitions, is that there is so much more to life than just the financials when it comes to financial planning and wealth management. Many of the transitions that I've been a part of have gone well. Mine's one of them. I'm very proud of what we do at Cogent Strategic Wealth, but I've also seen some that haven't gone so well. So today we are really excited to offer you our perspective on the essential elements for living a full life and also leveraging the perspective and insights of our special guest today. Many professionals plan out every part of their financial life, but from work to family, vacations, celebrations, so much forethought goes into this, and it seems to work out well. But one of the things that we found is that in transitions in life, whether it's from one career to another, whether it's from full-time work and making that work optional, many people don't spend the time to actually create a plan that is purposeful and intentional for where they want to go to. So I'm excited today to collaborate with our guest. Our guest host is going to be Alan Spector on how achieving professionals like you and me can better envision your future and obtain the tools to develop just a personal transitional plan, just unique to you, your life, and your circumstances. So today we're going to talk about so many more things, and I don't want to minimize the things that we do as a wealth management firm. Those are going to be things I know are a part of Alan's process, but such as cash flow, of having an investment plan to meet your goals, just multi-year strategies on minimizing taxes, even how to acquire health insurance during the periods by which you're not covered under an employer plan. But those things are really important. But today we want to go beyond the numbers. So I hope this is meaningful. I hope at the end you feel empowered, that you get some clarity on the steps you can take. And I really hope that this inspires and motivates you to take the steps to be able to make this so beneficial for you. Today, I am really happy that I'm able to introduce Kelly Stanley. Kelly Stanley is my partner and fellow wealth advisor at Cogent. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, and thank you for the introduction there. Welcome everybody to our webinar today. I am very happy to introduce Alan Spector. Alan has spent 33 years working for Procter & Gamble before he actually transitioned into retirement. And as I was reviewing his bio, it was quite apparent that he has done far more in retirement than he has done in his previous career at Procter & Gamble. He has been a strategic planning consultant for a number of cancer organizations and nonprofits across the United States. And he has authored 10 published books, including Your Retirement Quest and After the Cheering Stops, a retirement game plan for elite athletes and boomer career professionals seeking a new future. He is also a co-founder of Lifescape Solutions, which focuses on helping people live a fulfilling retirement by being purposeful before making major life transitions so that they can live their best life in their next chapter. What I found most interesting about Alan, though, is that he still finds plenty of time to be active and to volunteer in his free time. He continues to play baseball and with kids his own age, and is a two-time silver medalist in the Senior Olympics. Most importantly, though, he is a father, a grandfather, and a husband, and who he travels extensively with. So welcome, Alan. We're excited to have you with us today.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to being a part of this webinar. Thank you.
Yeah. Is there anything else that we should know about you before we get started?
Sure. And actually, it's less about me than it is about we. And what I mean by that is I've been on this journey, and we're going to talk a little bit about that shortly, of what that journey has been for over 2 decades now. And I've had a partner in crime in that, and his name is Keith Lawrence, former Procter & Gamble colleague, friend, co-author of the book, Your Retirement Quest. So as we go through and I refer to we, it's Keith and me. And I just wanted to kind of point that out up front. The other thing that I wanted to point out as we're getting started here is one of the chapters in our book, Your Retirement Quest, is entitled Retirement is the Wrong Word. And it goes through the whole explanation about retirement is not an ending, it's a beginning and all of that. And at the end of the chapter, though, we say, but we're going to use the word anyway because everybody kind of gets it. Well, as we talk about transitions and retirement today, if the discussion talks about retirement, and for anybody listening, it's about a different transition, it will still apply to you, even though we may have used the word retirement. So I just wanted to point that out up front.
Great. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I know this is going to be a great conversation because, as Michael and I know in our work together, nearly everybody makes transitions. Both of us have made transitions in our careers over time, and we want to help our clients make the most of it when it's time for them to make a transition. One thing that we do know is that every transition is more successful when there's a plan in place. So to get us started here, I'm going to kick it back over to Michael, who's going to kick it off for us.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly, and welcome, Alan. Alan, I've heard you speak in person. I've listened to podcasts. I've read your books. I'm really appreciative of your perspective. Can you give us some context, though, on why this framework and all these solutions that you and Keith have brought to us, why do they matter to you?
That's a great question, Michael, and it's really the foundation of the work that we've done. As I was approaching retirement about 2 to 3 years out, I realized that it was coming and that it was a major transition. And so I started interviewing former Procter & Gamble colleagues of mine, asking them questions like, what's working, what's not working, what surprised you? And I came away pretty discouraged. A lot of them were really struggling with the transition they had made and getting their feet on the ground. I shared that with my friend Keith Lawrence, who at the time was a director of human resources at P&G. And Keith said, I'm seeing the same thing. We've got people coming back into the hallways looking for people just to talk, have a cup of coffee with and talk to. We actually have a few people who have come and asked for their job back. And he and I looked at each other in the eye and said, whoa, wait a minute. This is not the retirement we've worked so hard to deserve. Let's go on a learning journey. So we began reading every book, looking for the retirement relevant research, interviewing more people, including non-P&Gers. And in doing that, we came to the conclusion that we had an opportunity to make our retirements better. And we actually got to the point where we said, maybe we've got something that we can share with others. And that's what basically got us started on the journey. So both of us left Procter & Gamble when we transitioned. Keith calls it graduating. When we transitioned, we both left with a written life plan. And having done that, it made our retirements better and is part of what we recommend to people today. And perhaps we'll talk about that a little bit later in the webinar. So that's the background.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's great. I think it's actually point number 1 of your 10 points about having a plan, and it's great that you developed it for yourself and then you share it with others. So we're really appreciative of that. So let's jump right in, if you don't mind. I just mentioned your retirement quest, 10 key elements of a fulfilling retirement, a book that I really like. Kelly and I are very comfortable sharing it with the people that we partner with in our firm, their clients and the clients and the families, and their families. But let me ask you this, Alan. Why do you feel that this life planning is so important for transitions or retirement, making work optional, whatever you want to call it? Why is it so important? And why did you yourself adopt it and now counsel others to do the same?
So, Michael, I think the basis for all of this is that each of us has worked hard on things we perhaps love to do, but have worked hard to develop the wherewithal to have a retirement that we deserve. And as Keith and I did all of this research for our own benefit, we learned that people were not really aware of many of the challenges that they might face in their future. And even those who were saying, oh, I'm satisfied in retirement, when we poked a little bit deeper, we found that they weren't aware of some of the opportunities that were available to have an even more fulfilling retirement. So we, as part of reading all of these books that I shared with you, that I talked to you about, we found that there was a lot of good information out there, but what the books were missing was answering the question, so what? What do I do with all this information? How do I build it into a plan? I'm working with my financial resources to build a financial plan. That's where my planning's been focused. But what about the other side of it? Some call it the soft side. I call it the necessary side. So what we did, along with doing it ourselves, is we began to share with others about how planning could help them, and gave them some tools in order to put those plans together. And the feedback we got was that the retirements that they were either already living or looking forward to living, they were much more confident that it was going to be what they wanted it to be. So the primary reason of putting together what we call a holistic written life plan, and I'm sure we'll get into what those terms mean a little bit later, putting one of those together increases the odds that you will live the retirement you've worked so hard to deserve. And that's not trivial, because the data say that fewer than half of the people in retirement are enjoying their retirement. That's, a flip of the coin tells you whether you're going to enjoy it or not. For me and for many others, that's not good enough. So the primary reason is a written holistic life plan increases the odds that you'll have the retirement that you deserve. The other aspect of it is, if you put that plan together before you transition, you have the opportunity to practice retirement. And again, I think we'll probably get into that concept a little bit later on. So the plan allows you to live the retirement you want to live, and it allows you to practice the retirement even before you do make the transition. That's the reason that planning is so important.
Oh, Alan, that's great. That's really great. One of the things I heard you talk about is the data. And I've heard you also mention in your book about the research. I think that's great that you use the evidence of what others have done to successfully transition our retirement. And we share that with you in the way that we do many things within our firm, including our evidence-based investing. So
Nice.
We appreciate that. And I think that's why many of the things you talk about resonate with me. So thank you.
Nice.
So Alan, you had mentioned in your own approach to retirement, 2 to 3 years prior to when you actually stepped away, you started thinking about that. Is that an ideal time frame for when somebody should start to think to begin planning for a transition, or what would you recommend in terms of timing of when to actually start the planning process?
Yeah, so Kelly, I think the answer to that question comes out of the experience we've had in the workshops that we've run around the country now for 11 or 12 years. And that is, there are people in the workshops who are already retired, some up to as many as 10 years into it. There are some who have not yet retired, some of those as early as 10 years before the transition. Most are within 2 to 3 years of either side of that divide. And in talking with them and in doing the research, again, not our own research, but looking at retirement relevant research, we've come to one simple conclusion. Regardless of where you are in your journey, the best time to start your planning is now. And that's because if you already have made the transition and you're not living the retirement that you want, or if you've moved on to maybe even a different career and it's not the career that you want, sitting back and taking the time to put together a plan is the best time to do it right now. And again, doing it beforehand also allows you the opportunity to practice retirement. We may not have time to talk about them all today, but we've identified 5 myths that many people think about retirement. One of those is, I'll figure it out later. I'm just going to lay back. I'm going to figure it out later. What we find is that most of the folks who take that point of view don't figure it out later. They fall into a very small comfort zone. Some people call it a rut, and they never really take full advantage of the opportunities. So the best time to start is now. That being said, 2 to 3 years before you retire is really the sweet spot, because you're close enough to be able to feel it.
Right.
But you still have some time to do some adjusting to have the right plan before you retire.
Well, that makes sense. It sounds like it's never too soon, right, to start planning. If you start to have this vision of what your future may look like, then might as well start coming up with a plan to help get you there.
Exactly.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, Alan, I think that myth is wonderful because the risk of waiting is never getting started, right? And one of my own things that might be appropriate for this, before I started Cogent, I took 4 to 5 years to actually interview many people that were in this industry, also others that were seeking what I wanted to offer. And it was really enlightening to me that you didn't have to reinvent everything. You could actually look ahead and use a matrix that other people did, learn from their mistakes, their triumphs, and be able to apply it to yourself. So I think there's 2 intriguing concepts that I actually did myself. And I'd like to hear your side of this and expand on it. And one is crucial conversations. I love that. And also practicing retirement. You mentioned that a couple of times so far. Would you describe them and share with us, why is that important?
Sure, be glad to. Let's take them one at a time. So one of the things we learned was that even couples, people living together, frequently do not have the conversations necessary to be aligned as they enter retirement. And there's some risk associated with that. I mean, you're going from, I go off to work during the day, whether it's to an office or to my office at home, whatever it is. I go off to work every day and then I come back and we're together, but now we're going to be together 24/7. What's that going to mean? And so Keith and I thought about that and said, we need to prompt the crucial conversations. And by the way, not just between partners in a couple relationship, but recognize your retirement, your transition is going to affect a lot of people. And a lot of people are going to affect your transition and your retirement. Wouldn't it behoove you, in the same way when you put together a business plan, wouldn't it behoove you to have conversations about that up front, so that there are no surprises? There's never no surprises, but there are fewer surprises. And so having these crucial conversations get the 2 parties, whether it's a spouse, a partner, an adult child, an aging parent, a close friend, whoever it is that's going to be in your life in after this transition, let's talk about it. And I think the reasons might be obvious, but even though they're obvious, many people don't do it. And we've seen many examples of that. One of the data points that we found is that the segment of society with the fastest growing divorce rate in the country are couples over the age of 55. And when we talk to couples in our workshops, it's not uncommon for them to say, I married him for lunch and love, or excuse me, for love, but not for lunch. It's like we can't spend all this time together. Anyway, so having the crucial conversations is critical, and starting early. Kelly is part of this sweet spot. When's it time to start planning? The earlier you start them, the better off you'll be. So that's crucial conversations.
And we agree with that. We'll hear couples in our midst when we're talking about goals and maybe trepidations even, and things for them and their own retirement on the financial side, which we're addressing. We'll hear one spouse say to another, oh, wow, I've never heard you say that out loud. And let's talk more about that. And how do I fit in? And I think that eliminates some of the like I said, the trepidation and other things when it's talked out. And I think it's sometimes difficult to hear some of it, but it's also enlightening to get good feedback, especially from someone that knows you so well.
Yeah, and Michael, let me do a quick story that I think will really drive this point home. We're running a workshop. It's going to be it's an extended workshop. We've got time to ask everybody, tell everybody your name and why you're here. And a guy stands up and he says, "My name is Charles Smith. I'm here because I'm going to retire in a couple of months, and I wanted to find out what I needed to do to get prepared." The woman sitting next to him, yes, it was his wife, said, "You're what?" She had no idea while she was being dragged to it. It was the first time he had used the word retirement in front of her. And no, they were okay by the end of the workshop. We worked through all that. But had they had the crucial conversations beforehand for the last couple of years, they would have been in a much better position to transition into retirement than they were. So that brought your point home to us, Michael.
A great concept. Great story. Thank you for relating that. Now, tell us a little bit about practicing this. So you've had your crucial conversation. You have the written plan. Let's talk about how that looks.
Right. So think about this written plan a little bit. This is what it is you're excited about transitioning to in retirement, whether it's perhaps another body of work that's different than your standard career. By the way, another myth is retirement means not working, right? Working in retirement is not a bad thing. It doesn't have to be a all-consuming 60-hour-a-week thing anymore. But let's assume you've got that written plan, and it's the things that you've been excited about, looking forward to and planning for and then doing. Well, why not bring part of that into your life today while you're still working? So let's assume we're in Kelly's sweet spot. We're at 2 to 3 years before we're retiring. We know what our plan is. Now let's start practicing that plan. Many people will say, "I don't have time. I've got work. I've got travel. Still have family." And we say, "Okay, let's deal with the specifics here." And invariably, we can find time for that person to practice retirement. So an example is, I knew I wanted to play baseball in retirement, which meant traveling to tournaments and maybe 2 or 3 games a week for a while, whatever. And I knew I didn't have the time to do that when I was working, but I could play in a Sunday league. So I practiced retirement. Whether it has to do with playing bridge in retirement or golfing or gardening or whatever it is you want to do, if you bring part of it into your life today, that's practicing. Now, why do you want to do that? Well, one is you're testing your plan. Many people find out, wait a minute, I'm not as excited about this as I thought I would be. So you have time to adjust your plan so when you make the transition, it's smoother. Another reason is when you test that plan, you can now walk into your wealth advisor and say, "This is my retirement life plan. Can we build a financial plan around that?" Which is different than them walking into you and saying, "Make sure I don't run out of money." A lot of what you would do with those two questions are the same, but it's a much more nourishing conversation when it's built around that life plan. And the final reason to practice retirement is, if these are things that you're really excited about and looking forward to, why would you not want to bring them into your life today and add them to, or maybe replace some other things that are not as fulfilling for you, that you're not looking forward to as much? So practicing retirement is I think, a critical part of getting ready for that transition.
Oh, that sounds really practical. And it also maybe will help you bystep some mistakes, maybe even by practicing it, I think.
Yes. My buddy Keith Lawrence wanted to teach in retirement. So he got a gig doing an evening class at one of the local universities. He hated it. I'm not going to go into all the reasons he did, but he just hated it. He said, "Okay, I need to revise my plan." Well, had he dedicated much of his plan to that after retirement, yeah, he would have figured it out, but here he was able to make a much smoother transition into retirement. Run the test.
Sounds good. So Alan, once folks have those crucial conversations and then they take the time to actually practice their retirement, And once they've created a financial plan that actually shows that they can actually take this next step in their life, is there a specific time frame when somebody's actually going to know that it is the right time to make that transition? Or how will they know when it's the right time?
Yeah. So two parts of this, Kelly, before I lay out the way you figure out when to retire. One is there's not really a time frame. And the other part is there's nothing about it that's age related, right? It could be at any age. And the way that we've approached this, and it has stood the test of time, people tell us all the time that this is how they made their decision and it worked out really well. There are 4 questions to ask yourself. When the answer to each of those 4 questions is yes, it's time to make the transition. It's time to retire. There's no reason to wait. So here's the 4 questions. Do I have enough, which is the one you referred to, right? Am I in alignment with my financial advisor? And I can answer the question, yes, I will have enough. And again, that's true whether you're transitioning into retirement or you're transitioning perhaps into another entrepreneurial career. It doesn't matter. You still have to ask the question, will I have enough to make that transition? The second question is, will I have enough to do? In the vernacular that we're talking about today, another way to ask that is, do I have a holistic written retirement life plan? If the answer is yes, then you know what the other side's going to look like, and you ought to be confident to jump into that other side. So do I have enough? Will I have enough to do? The third question is, have I had enough? Like, I may have had this wonderful X year career, and by the way, I'm still loving it. I'm energized by getting up in the morning and going to work. I love my clients, my patients, my students, whatever it is. I love it. Well, if that's true, then the answer to that question is no. Why would you retire? But if the answer is yes, it's been a good run, but I'm just not energized by it anymore, then the answer might be yes. So do I have enough? Will I have enough to do? And have I had enough? The fourth question is, does somebody want me around 24/7? Right? And this prompts the crucial conversations. You have to have those conversations to answer that question. And it's not uncommon for there to be some rough patches there as that answering that question starts to play out. And yes, so the 4 questions: do I have enough? Will I have enough to do? Have I had enough? And does somebody want me around 24/7? When the answer to all 4 of those questions is yes, why are you still doing what you're doing? Doesn't matter how old you are. Why are you still doing what you're doing? And again, that has stood the test of time.
No, it's great, because I know we definitely have had some clients we've worked with that have been in their late 40s, early 50s that are killing it at work. They spend a lot of hours of their time doing what they're doing, but they have communicated that they don't want to continue doing this, for the rest of their lives. So I think having some of these crucial conversations and some of the, building in some of the practicing part of retirement, even if it's transitioning to a different career or starting something else at some point, would be super helpful in making those transitions eventually.
We actually had, we were in a workshop, I remember in Louisville, I can picture the room, and we're going through the 4 questions, and a woman in the back of the room, when we get done with the 4th, she literally stood up and hollered, "I'm out of here." And we thought it was like she's leaving the workshop, but it was like, no, she had checked off the 4 questions in her mind as we were asking them, and she decided, I'm retiring. I just didn't have a framework on how to think about it. So it's, those 4 questions really, really work out well.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, Alan, I love that. For myself, too, I went through a transition from being a professional trader over a couple of multi-decade career to moving into, helping. And earlier you said it was about we and not me. Trading was all about me. And going into this business is all about we. I have a fantastic team. I have a Cogent family around me, both our clients and our strategic partners. And I think it's really important. So one of the other things I wanted to touch on here was your perspective and on how current retirees, someone that didn't have the benefit of the forethought that you're talking about and all that, but how do they develop this plan that you talk of, ex post ante, I think they would say in the legal term or whatever, that after the fact, how do they go about addressing this?
So, Michael, I'm going to answer your question, but I want to preface it by saying that what I'm about to say not only applies to somebody in the way that you framed it, somebody who's already retired, but the exact same process works for somebody who's not yet retired. And oh, by the way, we've had people actually come and ask us, do we do this for the Boy Scouts? The process and the elements that we're going to talk about are they're about life. They're not just about retirement. So no matter what transition you're making, the approach that I'm about to describe to you in overview, I think would work. But let's talk about it in the context that you framed it. So one of the things that Keith and I did through our interviews and looking at the retirement relevant research is we identify what we refer to as the 10 key elements of a fulfilling retirement. These are 10 aspects of life. And if you want to, in a little bit, we can talk about a couple of examples. But these are 10 elements of life that are important to think about as you put your plan together. And by the way, earlier on, when I used the word holistic, I was using it to mean that to the extent that you can bring all of these key elements into your plan, as opposed to just cherry picking one or two, you're going to be in a better place. So there's these 10 key elements. We can talk also later about resources where people can go find out what these are, because we may not have time to talk about them a lot today. But take these 10 key elements and then do what you do for any plan that you put together. What do I mean by that? In my strategic planning consulting, basically what I'm asking organizations to do is figure out, where are you today? What's the future you want to create? And then what steps do I need to take to close the gap between current state and future state? I'm sure everybody who's watching this webinar has put together a plan, whether it's a lesson plan in a classroom, or a treatment plan for a patient, or a game plan if you're an athlete, or you figure out, what do I need to do to achieve what my objectives are? So you take these 10 key elements, and then what we've done in our book, and again, also you can access it on our website, which we'll refer to when we get a chance later on, is take each of those key elements and assess, where are you in your life today relative to those key elements. Once you do that, that sets the stage for, maybe there's some key elements not only am I not very good at or aren't helping me, I haven't even thought about these. That's not surprising when we first interact with people on this. There may be some where you're rocking and rolling, cool, but recognize that and still integrate that into the plan as, here's some things I want to continue doing. So you take each of these key elements, and we've identified some simple but pretty profound tools to help people do that. And by the way, even though we talk about planning a lot, and I'm sure it's the same for you with the financial plan, we're not suggesting that people spend their entire retirement planning their retirement. This is about taking a little bit of time, doing some thinking, introspection about what's right for you, and then living the plan, which is what the retirement really is cracked up to be. So taking those key elements, taking the assessment, and then putting them into a plan that, again, we'll give you some resources on where to look for them, but let me just give you 3 quick examples. Everybody's heard about a bucket list, right? This is not about the movie, like I'm going to die in 6 months. What do I want to do before I die? This is about, what are those things I'm excited about doing, I want to do. They can be small things, they can be big things, but write them down. Many people have a bucket list, but it's in their head. By the way, the reason I emphasize writing it down is the research says that if you write it down, you're 5 times more likely to do it. And that's why we urge people to write it down, and why our plans Our plans are in format, if you will. So bucket list is one. Another one is we call finding the magic. And what that is asking yourself three questions. What do I love to do? What am I passionate about? What am I good at and have experience with? And what does the world need? And if you can bring those three together, the answers to those three together, frequently this happens in volunteer giving back opportunities. You have found the magic, right? What am I passionate about? What am I good at? What does the world need? If you apply those passions and skills to what that need is, that's a good way to think about planning aspects of your retirement. And the final one I just want to touch on briefly is the one that the book Your Retirement Quest is based on, which is what we call start, stop, continue. Based on what you find about your key element assessment, you can choose, what do I want to start in my life that's going to help a key element? What do I want to stop in my life that's getting in the way of enjoying a key element? And what's working well for me that I want to continue? Getting those written down has really been helpful to folks. And actually, the book is written to be a workbook. At the end of each chapter, there's a place to write down your thoughts about each of these items. So that's simply what I would suggest folks do, Michael. Take the key elements, assess yourself, put together a written plan, and then, oh, by the way, live the plan. And it'll give you feedback about whether you need to adjust the plan.
And that's great. And one of the things I heard you say is just finding the magic and going about it. Let's dive in a little deeper here of the 10 elements that you do bring up. Are there a few that, in reflection here to whether you're a few years before or you're already into, but are there a few that you'd like to touch on that would make this just so purposeful and intentional? I know the whole book is set up for that, and I appreciate that. Touch on a few things to motivate and to inspire people to take a look at it and start those conversations with themselves and their.
I'd be glad to. So one of the key elements, as an example, we call connectedness. You may call it relationship. We call it connectedness. And what we found is that many people, when they're working in their primary careers, they're surrounded by colleagues, patients, students, fill in the blank. We're surrounded by people. Frequently, we think about those people as our friends. And then we retire and we find out, no, wait a minute, they were work acquaintances. Now, some of them may continue to be friends, but frequently many do not. So here we go into retirement, and connectedness by every research measure is one of the top 2 or 3 things you can do to make sure that you increase your longevity and that you increase the quality of your life. So connecting to networks of people, whether it be clubs or teams or organizations or whatever, is important. Increasing the number of what we call 2 o'clock in the morning friends. Who are those deep personal friends that you have that if at 2 o'clock in the morning you needed help and you got on the phone, you would have no qualms about calling Michael and saying, Michael, I need help. And Michael would not ask why, he'd be on the way to you immediately, right? Those are your deep personal friendships. And depending on how you read the research, having somewhere between 7 and 12 of those is the sweet spot. But sometimes fewer than that still works. Most of the time, our work colleagues are not those 2 o'clock in the morning friends. So you need to be intentional, to use your word, about looking forward and listing those. And do you need to nurture some friendships that are close to that, but not really, or whatever? So that's part of the plan, is figuring out where you are relative to the key element called connectedness. Another example is what we call giving back, which is, again, can be volunteering, can be writing a check to an organization. And we treat this very selfishly. And what I mean by that is certainly we want to contribute to our communities because they need the help, whether it's financial aid, whether it's volunteer help, whatever. But again, the research is clear. People who volunteer get more out of the exercise than the person that they're helping. Consistently says that. By the way, there's a correlation to that says the closer you are to the person that you're helping, the more you get out of it than if you, so writing a check versus sitting across the table from a second grader who needs reading tutoring, the reading tutoring is going to be selfishly more helpful to you. Keep writing those checks because they're also necessary, but you don't get the same level of satisfaction out of that. And the other thing about giving back that we suggest is if you really are just starting on developing and living a plan, that's not a bad key element to start with. Because as you volunteer, not only do you get the satisfaction of that and help other people, but you also start to meet people who are like-minded. And they can also become your nurtured friends of the future. And they will tell you, oh, we're doing this. Do you know I'm also doing that? And this brings up a point that I wanted to make sure I found a time to mention. And that is in the same way that Kelly and Michael, the two of you, recommend to your clients to have a diverse portfolio of investments. What Keith and I recommend is that they also have a diverse portfolio of meaningful activities. So if your retirement is, hey man, I'm going to play golf every day. Cool. But guess what? There's some brain science that eventually makes that not as fulfilling as it was when you started. And so having a diverse portfolio of some volunteering, social with friends, those sorts of things, and a list of things that you do, perhaps some of it working in retirement, then you're going to be better off as you build your plan. So anyway, connectedness and giving back are two of the examples of the key elements, and a couple of comments about how you might take advantage of those.
Oh, that's fantastic, Alan. Thank you. One of the things that Kelly and I have seen with people that have made the transition from full-time work and is that they actually have allocated time, some of them even as much as percentages of how much of my time do I want to spend doing this and doing that. They've also taken their calendar and matched it up with their spouses or others in their life so that they didn't step on anybody's toes when it might be important for their plan to be connected to them. And I think that purposeful way of looking at that really, really helps. And I love the idea of diversification. I think we all need more of that in our life, whether it's the things you apply yourself to or the people you have around you and the ideas that come in. I think it forms better people, better leaders, better spouses, all that, when you are able to take in more information and then say, how do I apply this to my own self, my own thinking? I think you're a better person for that. So I appreciate
I've got a grandson who's, started his college application process. And he's not surprised by, because we've been helping him with it, he's not surprised that what universities are looking for are people with diverse accomplishments in their background. Because those are the people who become future leaders and learners and those sorts of things. So absolutely.
Yeah, wonderful. Kelly, is there anything else that you are thinking about, or maybe questions that we've heard from some of the people in our Cogent family that they have questions about transitioning or retiring?
And I think for the most part, we haven't heard any, kind of horror stories or anything like that when folks actually make the transition. But what if somebody does make this transition and perhaps things didn't go exactly as planned? Is there any steps that they can take to kind of get back on track?
Yeah, that's a great question. So remember we talked about, you start with assessment. Where are you relative to the key elements? Then you put your plan together, and then you go out and do your plan. And then we suggest that you also periodically renew your plan. You may do it because your life circumstances have changed. You might do it because you find yourself in what we call disenchantment. There are 5 stages of retirement. Disenchantment is the one you don't want to spend a lot of time in, as you can tell from the term. But if you find yourself there, you're not getting out as much, COVID aside, you're not getting out as much as you have been. You're spending a lot of time in front of television or your social media. You're not engaging with people. It's time to rekindle the spark, and that can come from renewing your plan, pulling out your plan, looking at it and going like, oh, I said I was going to continue doing this because it was really working for me, but I haven't been. Or, yeah, I started this, but it didn't have the impact that I thought it would. I need to find something else to start or stop in my life, depending on what it is. So I had a P&G colleague who would always say, a plan is only something from which to deviate. And that's the way we think about it too, is once you have a plan and you're doing it consciously with intention, renewing that plan periodically, especially if you find yourself not happy with what's going on, is a great thing to do. And in fact, we also suggest to people, even if things are rocking and rolling, every once in a while, take a look at that plan and just, renew it. I know you probably all do every once in a while reviews of the financial plan, even if it's working, just to make sure everybody's still on the same sheet of paper. Same thing with the life plan. So I think that's the way I would position that, Kelly.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Appreciate that.
Alan, if there's a couple that are looking at where they might take the next step, they've had crucial conversations, they understand where each one wants to go, and they're aligned, and it's all good. How would you describe to them a good process for thinking about who goes first?
Yeah, well, actually, you've answered your own question, Michael, and you did that because you said they each know where they want to go. So the way we talk about that is that there are 3 plans in a couple situation. There's one partner's plan, there's the other partner's plan, and then there's the plan that they do together. My wife is deeply involved with a book festival here in St. Louis, and it overlaps with a baseball tournament that I play in Florida in the same time frame in November. And it's like, okay, I've got a plan. I'm passionate about baseball. She's passionate about the book festival. I support what she does. She supports what I do. We've talked about it. And each year we figure out how are we going to manage November to get the full benefit of both. And a couple of years it has been, she stayed in St. Louis for the festival and I went to Florida by myself. This year she joined me and she actually listened to the book festival while she was watching my games. I don't think she was watching my games very much. But the point is we each have a plan, and then we talk about crucial conversations, how that plan goes together. Well, the same thing applies for deciding what the sequence of retirement should be. If both of a partnership are working, figure out what your plan is, maybe practice it, have the crucial conversation and say, based on our plan, what is the right sequence of retiring? One first and then the other, both at the same time. How's that going to work out? And I can't overemphasize the importance of these crucial conversations. And they are really energized if, in fact, each person has thought about what their plan ought to be.
Oh, fantastic, Alan. Fantastic. I love the insights and I love the thought process behind it. You've mentioned resources a lot. Why don't you take a minute to explain where people can find these resources, how they can get to them, and how they best can use them?
So there's several things that folks can do. You mentioned a couple of the books that are available, Your Retirement Quest and After the Cheering Stops. Basically, what they do from different perspectives is go through the subject matter we've been talking about today and walk readers through the plan development process. By the way, one that I'm not sure you've seen yet is I wrote a book called Retired Agers, which is not just the process of transition from work to work optional, but the process of transition of aging through retirement. So again, it's built on the same foundation of information, but it addresses the aging process. There are a couple other things that people who are watching the webinar might want to do. www.yourretirementquest.com, and that ought to open up the information we've talked about. We've got a YouTube channel called Your Retirement Quest, which has snippets of videos, like 3 to 5 minutes, that cover subjects. One of them is crucial conversation. One of them is practicing retirement. There are a number of others. And we've got a Facebook group for those on Facebook called Your Retirement Quest, where every week or so, Keith and I post articles and videos about retirement so that people don't have to go searching for it for themselves. It'll be fed to them. So those are some examples of resources. And oh, by the way, if anybody has any questions following this, if they want to get in touch with me, I'm at bball, never too old, the number 2, at AOL.com. So the letter B, the word ball, the number 2, the word never, at AOL.com. Send me a note. Remind me where you got my email from so I know where you're coming from. And I'd be glad to help with any questions that you might have.
Oh, that's great, Alan. Alan, I'll take it one step further. If you're watching this and you're intent on taking advantage of the tools that you've created, Cogent is willing to buy you the book, 10 Key Elements and Your Retirement Quest. So we'll buy that for you and we'll send it out to you. And we'd love to have that conversation with you around how does it fit into a holistic wealth management plan. Our entire business is set up around designing, building, and protecting a life on your terms. And Alan, everything that you shared with us today, all of the insights that you do, you could almost do a find replace for wealth management. And it's so wonderful to know that you follow a process, that you suggest people think about this in a way that's evidence-based, rational, and also based on themselves and who they see themselves and where they like to be. We really appreciate that, Alan. We really do. I just want to say thank you. Thanks for spending the last hour with us. Thanks for the investment that you made in us and the Cogent family that's out there listening to us. And really want to say thank you, Alan. I appreciate that investment of your time.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, Michael and Kelly and Colleen, if you're listening. For helping me participate here. And again, anytime people have questions, tell them to send them my way.
Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect. And I'm going to challenge everybody that's watching this, just like you challenged yourself, Alan, and created a plan for yourself and Keith as you left B&G. I'd like to challenge the people that are considering, in the middle of, or even have, but it's not going as well. Challenge you, take that next step. Make sure that you are applying yourself in an appropriate way, a purposeful way, based on your values, based on who is around you, who you love, and the things that you really, really want to do. Take that next step, and we'd be happy to help point you towards any of the resources that we or Alan and Keith can provide you. So we really appreciate that. So I challenge you, get at it. Let's see how it works out, and let's have a conversation about it.
Yeah, Alan, thank you so much for joining us today and providing us with this framework, which ourselves and our clients can help utilize to start planning their next transition. And as Michael mentioned, we have lots of resources available that we are happy to provide, whether it's the books or getting you pointed in the right direction, for developing this next step in your journey. And if anybody is interested more in how Cogent can help you to design, build, and protect a plan for your next transition, please give us a call. Thank you all for joining us today.